and it's called Poem with Chainsaw Backing. Talk about your chainsaw massacres. I thought that only happened in Texas, but here it is, right outside my door, and at the worst possible moment, right in the middle of a long, romantic kiss. Just before the whispered sigh comes the earth-shattering whir of the saw and crash, bang, thunk of a falling limb or log or piece of 2x4. Hell, I don't know. I don't have time to keep up with construction work agendas. I have my own building tension to be concerned with. Not to mention, this poem calls for very careful timing. A pregnant pause and whirr, crash, bang, thunk just doesn't go with the chainsaw backing. Can't they use a regular manual kind of saw? I have heard those are musical, and they go just great with the building tension of the poetry at hand. Now then, uh, hello, Jolie. Good to see you. This was a request. Uh, Actually, I had a couple of people request this one. It's called In the Pine Straw Blowing, and it's hard to even take credit for it. It is just a poem that came to me. And here it is. You will have to tell me soon, she said. You will have to tell me soon, she said. I cannot stand this sharp unknowing over there in the pine straw blowing. But they stayed a while as warm embrace grew hot with heavy groans and moaning that left needles sticking in her hair over there in the pine straw blowing. You will have to tell me soon, she said, with a fevered pitch that kept on growing. Tell me how many are injured or dead over there in the pine straw blowing. So he told her then in a husky voice, while the trees bent low, their colors showing, and his head was bowed from the knowing, over there in the pine straw blowing, that all was lost, not one came home to the barley fields a-growing, from the battlefields red flowing, over there in the pine straw blowing. Where farmers tending to their crops and mothers with their babes to rock, sweet children in the streets, all gone now, over there in the pine straw blowing. And he had to tell her quick and cold as her tears fell down from knowing, in the stark cold woods around the fields, over there in the pine. Was also a request. This was a request from Anselm, and the poem is Cotton. It was nowhere near as easy as it looked, pulling the puffy white from the hard brown bowl. I only did it the once, just to say I had done it. I don't mean a day of it, or a row of it, or a bag of it, or even a handful, just the one single bowl. Picking cotton wasn't a thing one bragged about doing. My mother and her sisters had. Their mother and her sisters and brother all had. And back across the generations everybody did back then. But Grandma was determined that I'd never have to. Good thing, I suppose. It is hard work in the hot sun. What I knew of the sticky plants and social stigma was all my friends who followed behind the machinery, picking what would have gone to waste otherwise, had money to spend at the fair and for Christmas, and wore store-bought clothes back to school, not like the ones my grandmother made for me, cut from the bolt of cloth made from the cotton that I would never, ever pick, except for that one bowl, so I would know something about it, see the hard work hidden behind the fluffy white softness, and be glad my life was lived on the other side of cotton. And I think Leslie also asked for this next one. Uh, thanks, everybody. I really do appreciate it. This is called The Sound of You. It is the sound of you I crave, the rise, the fall, the crest. Your words a symphony whose music swells, echoes through my bones, electrifies each synapse. It is the sound of you I crave. Who cares about the order of your words, placed one by one in rows or tumbling down the page? Even the meaning is less important. Though I often bathe in your wit, thrill at this word-born laugh, see the wisdom hidden there. Still, mostly, really, finally, it is the sound of you I crave. This last of the request list is my own request, just because I like the poem. It's okay to like your own work, y'all. It's called Restoration. I am mounting the restoration of a housing abnormality, ahead of its time when built, never meant for conformity. I've already removed 2 inches of goo and moss-covered neglect from windowsills and roof. Somehow all the best features have been removed or, like its opalescent luster, covered up with the mundane paint designed for plain wooden structures. I am unpainting this house, walls, roof, gutters, and trim, lifting off ill-thought-out improvements, layered on by the whim of fashion. I am busily unwhiting the gutters, returning them to their original green. I wonder why anyone thought this house not good enough as it was. We are similar, this house and I. We restore each other's dignity, removing improvements unwanted. And that's all the requests that I have, unless somebody else out there has one. If I were going to name this show something, I would call it a work in progress. Because as I was going through the poems I wanted to read, I thought at first I would read the best that I had, which is exactly what I did last time, the time before that, and most likely the time before that, and most of them are the same poems. So I decided instead to look through the ones that I haven't bothered to edit. I have so many poems that have come from the poetry prompt event, and I just really haven't taken the time to go back and edit very many of them, and I need to do that. So I made some quick edits, and that is going to be the bulk of what I read. But right now, I want to read some professional poems, because the point of a work in progress is to improve the poem. And we don't know what an improved poem sounds like if we don't ever read polished ones. So if you want to improve your writing, I was always told, read more poetry. And to that end, because we are recording this, the topic came up of when is it legal and appropriate to record somebody else's work. And there are all kinds of exceptions that make that okay. And one of them is in an educational setting. And I certainly hope that as we're all working on our poetry, that we would consider hearing polished poetry, professional poetry, as a learning process. And it is also, if I read another poet's work, it is meant to pay tribute to that poet. I admire that poet. They have been special in my life through their work, and I do hope everyone takes the opportunity to go and look them up and read their own work, and if they have a chance to hear it performed by the original poet, by all means, that is always the most desirable thing. I'm on really safe ground here, because I am going to do a poem by Emily Dickinson, and one by Rudyard Kipling, one by Lewis Carroll, and one by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, none of whom are going to pose legal objections to me doing so. I'm going to do one by Tom Hearns, who on his website says anyone is welcome to do this as long as they give him credit. The poet is Tom Hearns. When I read his poem, I will post a link in the chat so that you can check him out. Gunga Din. Yeah, betcha. Um, so, that being said, and I am also going to read a Maya Angelou poem um, because of the poets who have had an impact on my life. I think she has had the most significant impact, um, both in the content of her work, her style. I note particularly when you hear her read her own work, how when she's reading the lines that are repeated, she never reads them exactly the same way. And that has been very instructive to listen to how she reads her poems. So here we go. Um, I'm going to start with Emily Dickinson. This poem we actually studied in a Coursera class on modern poetry, and I had no idea. You can take Emily Dickinson just at surface level and enjoy her, or you can spend a good week delving into uh, the minutia of the poem, every comma, every dot, and get things out of it that you never dreamed were there before. So she's wonderful in that way. And the other way which she was wonderful is she really did want to be published, y'all. It's not true that she was so reclusive that she did not want her work published. She submitted her work to be published. And she got some critique back, and they wanted her to change some things to fit the mode of poetry of her day to be publishable, and she refused to change her style because she did what she did for a reason. And we are ever so glad that she did not bend to that, and she wanted to be published, but not at that price. So as far as I know, there were 6 published in her lifetime that she knew about, and 3 or 4 more that she found out later somebody had turned in. Uh, This one, I do not know whether it was one of the ones that was published in her life or not, but it is called I Dwell in Possibility. She called it poem number 466. I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose, more numerous of windows, superior for doors, of chambers as the cedars, impregnable of eye, and for an everlasting roof the gambrels of the sky. Of visitors the fairest for vocation this, the spreading wide my narrow hands to gather paradise. Emily Dickinson. I just love it. I love that she ends on the unrhymed line for emphasis. That's the thing they wanted her to change. They wanted her to end on the rhymed line. This is also a great influence on my life, is this particular poem by Rudyard Kipling. I love Kipling's work as a child. I loved his work, and this poem has really um, it's really stuck with me through the years. I can't live up to it, but that doesn't mean I don't try. The poem is If. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give in way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those 2 impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build 'em up with worn out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Wise, wise words. Words of that weight need a little comic relief. Another poem, been with me all my life, and I still love it. The wonderful Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe, on mimsy were the borogoves and the momraz outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch, beware the Jubjub bird and shun the fumerous Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought, so rested he by the Tumtum tree, and stood awhile in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O Frabjous day, Callooh, Callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe, all mimsy were the borogoves, and the momraz outgrabe. Lewis Carroll. You know, when you've had a really, really bad day, read that and try not to smile. Just go ahead. You know, I smile every time. Thank you. Thank you for the kind compliment. When I first came to Second Life, I did not come with the thought of reading out loud myself. I had heard some other spoken word poets, and I was looking for a place for them to do it. And surprise, surprise, they did not come. Uh, and so I was literally pushed onto stage by Miss Circe Broom. This is Kubla Khan by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And he says this came to him in a dream, and when he woke up, he was trying to write it down. He claims it was 200 lines long originally, and he was interrupted in the middle of that to answer the door and tend to some business, and so the rest of the poem was lost. So this is the unfinished Kubla Khan. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alph the sacred river ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground, with walls and towers, were girdled round, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree, and here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. But oh, that deep romantic chasm which slanted down the green hill athwart a cedarn cover, a savage place as holy and enchanted as ere beneath a waning moon was haunted by woman wailing for her demon lover. And from this chasm, with ceaseless turmoil seething, as if this earth in fast thick pants were breathing, a mighty fountain momently was forced, amid whose swift half-intermitted burst, huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail, or chaffy grain beneath the thresher's flail. And mid these dancing rocks at once and ever it flung up momently the sacred river. 5 miles meandering with amazing motion, through wood and dale the sacred river ran, then reached the caverns measureless to man, and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean. And mid this tumult Kubla heard from far astral voices prophesying war. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated midway on the waves, where was heard the mingled measure from the fountain and the caves. It was a miracle of rare device, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. A damsel with a dulcimer in a vision once I saw. It was an Abyssinian maid, and on her dulcimer she played. Singing of Mount Abora, could I revive within me her symphony and song, to such a deep delight 'twould win me, that with music loud and long I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of ice, and all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware! His flashing eyes, his floating hair, weave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread, for he on honey dew hath fed, and drunk the milk of paradise. Oh, you just have to weep for what was lost. Beautiful piece. This is the Tom Heron's poem that I promised you, and here is the page on his policy on sharing his work, found at his website, where you can find other examples of his writing. This one is called Sometimes a Wild God. Sometimes a wild god comes to the table. He is awkward and does not know the ways of porcelain, of fork and mustard and silver. His voice makes vinegar from wine. When the wild god arrives at the door, you will probably fear him. He reminds you of something dark that you might have dreamt, or the secret you do not wish to be shared. He will not ring the doorbell. Instead, he scrapes with his fingers, leaving blood on the paintwork. Through primroses grow in circles around his feet. You do not want to let him in. You are very busy. It is late or early, and besides, you cannot look at him straight because he makes you want to cry. The dog barks. The wild god smiles, holds out his hand. The dog licks his wounds and leads him inside. The wild god stands in your kitchen. Ivy is taking over your sideboard. Mistletoe has moved into the lampshades, and wrens have begun to sing an old song in the mouth of your kettle. I haven't much, you say, and give him the worst of your food. He sits at the table, bleeding. He coughs up foxes. There are otters in his eyes. When your wife calls down, you close the door and tell her it's fine. You will not let her see the strange guest at your table. The wild god asks for whiskey, and you pour a glass for him, then a glass for yourself. 3 snakes are beginning to nest in your voice box. You cough. Oh, limitless space, oh, eternal mystery, oh, endless cycles of death and birth, oh, miracle of life, oh, the wondrous dance of it all. You cough again, expectorate the snakes, and water down the whiskey, wondering how you got so old and where your passion went. The wild god reaches into a bag made of moles and nightingale skin. He pulls out a 2-reeded pipe, raises an eyebrow, and all the birds begin to sing. The fox leaps into your eyes. Otters rush from the darkness. The snakes pour through your body. The dog howls, and upstairs your wife both exults and weeps at once. The wild god dances with your dog. You dance with the sparrows. A white stag pulls up a stool and bellows hymns to enchantments. A pelican leaps from chair to chair. In the distance, warriors pour from their tombs. Ancient gold grows like grass in the fields. Everyone dreams the words to long-forgotten songs. The hills echo and the gray stones ring with laughter and madness and pain. In the middle of the dance, the house takes off from the ground. Clouds climb through the windows. Lightning pounds its fist on the table. The moon leans in through the window. The wild god points to your side. You are bleeding heavily. You have been bleeding for a long time, possibly since you were born. There is a bear in the wound. Why did you leave me to die? Asked the wild god, and you say, I was busy surviving. The shops were all closed. I didn't know how. I'm sorry. Listen to them. The fox in your neck, and the snakes in your arms, and the wren and the sparrow and the deer, the great unnameable beasts in your liver and your kidneys and your heart. There is a symphony of howling, a cacophony of dissent. The wild god nods his head, and you wake on the floor holding a knife, a bottle, and a handful of black fur. Your dog is asleep on the table. Your wife is stirring far above. Your cheeks are wet with tears. Your mouth aches from laughter or shouting. A black bear is sitting by the fire. Sometimes a wild god comes to the table. He is awkward and does not know the ways of porcelain, of fork and mustard and silver. His voice makes vinegar from wine and brings the dead to life. What an awesome piece. Okay, these are works that I was going through that I think these are ones I haven't read here or not. I don't think I've ever read these here. I may have read one or two. We'll see. And I don't know how many of them I'll be able to get through. But I'm going to go through pretty quick, and don't feel like you have to clap after each one. I just want to go with the flow here. In no particular order. I think I printed them out in alphabetical order, but I may have changed that accidentally when I pulled out one to read. Did I? Yes, I did. Okay. Well, here we go. I'll just stick it back in somewhere. Now, of course, I have to try to find the right place. There you go. This is called A Letter to the Muse, and what this actually is I wrote an envelope around a previous poem. It's actually just a new beginning. I looked back at the poem. I thought it was kind of angsty. I wasn't happy with it, and I took it in a new direction by writing a new beginning for it, and I gave it a new slant by changing a single word in that. So you may pick up on that something changes in the rhythm because the first part is brand new, and about halfway through it's this older piece that I'm trying to save. A Letter to the Muse. When I run out of options, when nothing seems to work out right, I resort to writing it all down in a letter. I never mail them. It's just a ritual. I suppose in a proper spell the letter would be burned with a pinch of sulfur, flame lit from a mystic black candle. It need not be that fancy, but I have a flair for the dramatic. Even Mother wrote letters, sorry letters, love letters, angry letters. Here I sit, trying, wasting efforts, searching for inspiration, coming up with nothing. Maybe I should just write a letter. A begging letter, a pleading letter, a letter to whom, I wonder? God, the devil, Mother Earth? I know. Dear Muse, I come with the gift of a pot full of nothing, barren, plain, and humbled, just as you wanted. What I have is the knowledge of my possibilities. I am not without value, only uninspired. What I bring has more worth than a pot full of gold. I bring a pot that is unbreakable and unstoppable. It may look unsure, ever at the edge of danger, always about to fall, but weeble-like it only wobbles. More useful than a pot of treasure, I bring a pot that is empty, just as you want it. Fill me. And sometimes it does. Sometimes you get that poem that just falls on you from nowhere. The rest of the time, poetry is just plain hard work. And what that fits into is a whole different piece that I have to find now. Haha. Yes. This one is called Today I Am a Poet, in recognition of the fact that sometimes it is just about hard work. I have always said I'm only the mirror. I'm the echo in the canyon, not knowing or caring about the origin of original thought. It was simple. Set aside judgment, become empty, relax, sigh, open, allow, speak. That's all there was, all that was needed. I lived inside the connection. The poem was you, and I only the reader of you. But today there's a tangible missingness in the ether. The vibrosphere is somehow still. I am lost in the lack, struggling for words, desperately trying to forge something from the nothingness. Today I weep into the emptiness, but feel compelled to speak, praying, begging for some meaning, some bright shard. Today I am not a mirror or an echo. Today I am a poet. Well, hopefully. This feels a little presumptuous sometimes. Uh, hmm. This is a really recent one. This one is called Decisions Reconsidered. We all make decisions daily. Life is frequently compromised. On a good day, with the right people, it never involves lies. Spend enough time together, you learn how things are, what is important, what's simply trivial. Respect each other's limitations. Love is not never having to say you're sorry, neither is it the empty promise of perfection. Love is never having to ask for what is already known to be essential, even when it seems irrational. This is a old poem that I haven't looked at in a while, so I don't think I've read it here recently, but I'm sure I have read it here at some point. It's called Division Lines, and it's kind of come up because it's a political year, and so many things seem to focus on dividing us instead of finding our common ground. Division lines. We draw lines to protect ourselves, cuddle our fears like warm blankets, draw our prejudices and our stereotypes to keep us safe from differences. Marking the map, marking our minds, always drawing division lines. We separate the fine elite. How dare you cross Division Street? Don't dirty up our pristine places with the poor and common masses. Do not come where you don't belong. This life is ruled by the rich and strong. Do not cross division lines. And you of darker skin and eyes, and you of insufficient height, and you with inferior intellect, you without a bank account, don't mix with those who aren't your kind. Do not cross division lines. If you pray to different gods, or call that power by other names, or face the east instead of west, or say your prayers in just your skin, then keep away, far, far away. Your hell might be contagious. I'll wage a war to prove I'm right, and save salvation for my kind. Do not cross division lines. And even when you see a wrong, your heart calls out, that cannot be right. Before you speak, go check your maps. Let's not forget geography. Make sure that everything agrees, religion, race, and social class. Do not ignore the posted signs, and do not cross division lines. Thank you. A lot of these were prompt words. Oh, yeah, it's not often I write a poem that can't be argued with. That's a great compliment. Um, I think this one was a prompt word, but I'm not sure. But if it was, I guess the word would have been wine. This poem is called It's Not the Wine. It isn't the wine. maybe it never was. It's the glass, it's the hand extended, the shared moment. It's the toast, the smile, the glancing touch. It's the uncorking and the pouring and the ceremonial common ground. It isn't the fruit of the vine, it's the fruit of something tangible into which we pour significance and share ourselves. And I don't remember where this one comes from either. I really should write these down. This one is called Lotus People. Come to me open, without expectation. Come to me fully, hoping for nothing. Come to me simply, come to me wholly, come to me willingly, come to me trusting. We meet in mutual agreement. I will open also as a lotus blossom in your hand. As senses awaken, discovering daily, changing, evolving slowly, we both will be different. A new dawn will come. Oh, I do think it's time for something a bit lighter and at the same time heavier. This is called Othorium, and it is meant to be read very over the top, and I'm not a good over the top reader, but I'm going to give it a real good try. This needs a Shakespearean actor to do it properly, but I'm going to give it. If you don't know what thorium is, Google it. You'll be fascinated. They've been holding out on us many, many years. O thorium. O thorium, O thorium, how did I miss your great historium, with time spent in classrooms and symposiums, listening to the wise and wonderful Eunomiums, and in the lab till late at night, doing my assigned exploriums. Having once discovered the evils of nuclear explosiums, participated in marches and imploriums, no more nuclear factoriums, generating electro-memoriums. While the powers that be superimposium, administering power plant overlordiums, knew of the most miraculous thorium, cheaper, better, safer power-upiums, keeping it hidden in secretoriums from me and you and us auroriums. Oh, thorium. Thorium powers a safer nuclear reactor. It was actually first. They set it aside in favor of what we have now because thorium doesn't generate any waste that they can make bombs out of. So we've known about it for quite a while. I read an Emily Dickinson poem earlier. I think Emily Dickinson was probably a time traveler. She was so far ahead of her time. And I've considered writing a story exploring that possibility. This is of Emily. We never knew of Emily, a pharaoh in disguise, who held besotted Joan of Arc imprisoned in her eyes. There were diamond mines and rubies kept silently inside, and she held the golden earth in the rapture of her mind. Entombed in expectation, through the centuries she glides, and the secrets of her passing are the secrets of our pride. We assume her into madness, define her path through time, but we never thought to question who she was inside. So easily contented to cast her in our gaze, of awkward, sad, and lonely, walking through a thickened haze. We miss the greater statement. Our condemnation does not see that it's not that fairy maiden who gives in to scrutiny. Her bravery was bolder. She cared not for our concern. And only now we see her, and only now we learn. She spoke volumes into madness, but it was not her despair, but we who could not understand a countenance so rare. I fancy that I see her standing white and mute, with a smile like Mona Lisa, and the laughter of her youth. Like we regard the business of ants and bumblebees, she must have looked and wondered, how could such mindless creatures be? Oh, yeah. This one was definitely a prompt word. Applauds like a freaking stalker, you betcha. Um, the word was kisses, and I don't write a lot of romantic type stuff, so I wanted to do something different with the word kisses, and the only thing I could think of was a little Hershey's Kiss. And while I was thinking about that, it occurred to me that with people like Saberman and Kleenex around, that they might not know what in the heck I was even talking about, and that's the train of thought that the poem really comes from. I've always loved those foil-wrapped dollops of pure delight, the anticipation of unwrapping, the just right size that fits perfectly into your mouth. Let them slowly dissolve on your tongue. Oh, those yummy, delicious chocolate drops. Is this a uniquely American experience? Is the rest of the world missing out? Do they even understand what I mean? And what secrets are they keeping? Do they have warm embraces or intimate graces all wrapped up in foil? What if there is a kaleidoscope of flavors I've never even considered, a super surprise taste database? I need to make a world tour of candy just to find out what lies past a kiss. Welcome back, Raymundo. This was a prompt word from 2015, from April. The word was vapor, but the poem is called mist. If you were sky and I the cloud upon you, if you were land and I the mountain's peak, if you were ocean and I the deepest crevice of your floor, if we were any creature on land, in sky, or sea, perhaps there would be time for blessed meetings, but as it is, you are but mist to me. That vapor which is and yet is not, that floats before an outstretched hand, that never yields itself to being grasped or held, but never leaves us peacefully reposed, a haunting sad reminder of our youthful days, and all that could have been lies behind doors now closed. Goodness, time flies by. I remember when an hour was an eternity. Now it's hard to shut me up. This is another political poem. It's been a kind of a political year. I want to preface this. No, I'll explain it later because it loses impact if I do that. This is called Mistake. I did not mean to, Your Honor, protested the youth at his trial. I lost my head. I was angry. Can't you see I'm just a child? I didn't mean to, Your Honor. I made a tragic mistake. But bang goes the gavel and death is imposed, as befits such a heinous crime. The sentence carried out quick and sure because of public outrage. We shall not tolerate actions like this. Do not be so all-fire dismayed. We have made an example and feel so much safer. Surely nobody else would dare to commit such a heinous act as again. Now they know that our justice is fair, and not only that, it's quick and sure. We have zero tolerance here. Do the crime, do the time, and what's more than that, we will exact an eye for an eye. We will kill you right back, give our backs a great pat for doing what's right after all. Some 10 years later, new evidence came, once DNA tests had improved. The youth had confessed, but not to the crime he had been put to death for. He couldn't be guilty after all. His blood tests did not match. Oh yes, they were similar, perhaps some close kin, but not this boy that we have killed. It was a mistake, says His Honor, when interviewed by the press, a tragic mistake that can't be undone, but just a mistake, nonetheless. It is not an actual story. If we have actually put a minor child to death, I am not aware of it. But we have tried minors as adults because of the heinous nature of their crime. And we have put to death some very young men who may not have been guilty. That much is sure. Well now, some days you get some really fun words to write to, and one day we got the word popcorn. Now it's very hard for me to write a serious piece. Yes, yes, we find people innocent on the basis of improved DNA evidence all the time. Sometimes too late. Um, um, I do not know the prisoner's name. This was a quote from a prisoner who reminded us you can release an innocent man from prison, but not from the grave. The word was popcorn, and it's really, really hard to write a serious poem about a word like popcorn, so I didn't even try. This is popcorn. I make popcorn at home the old-fashioned way, on the stove, in a pot, with a lid, and it's amazing. If you put too much in, that lid will come off. I like the anticipation. When standing there, you look through the glass lid and wait for that very first kernel to pop. It's never the one you think it will be. There you stand watching, and there's that most likely kernel starting to shake. It looks so ready. It really, really wants to pop. It wants to burst open and spill itself entire before any of the others. It's shouting, here I am, see me? But that's not the one. No, it's never the one. The first one takes you by surprise, and you never ever see it pop. A true story. Yeah, trying kids as adults is a heinous act. I agree. This word was posing, and it was also a lot of fun to write. Almost, but not exactly quite. Synonyms, synonymous, but not reasoned plight. You know what? I get a do-over every once in a while, right? This one needs a do-over because if you get the rhythm wrong, it won't work. Posing. Almost, but not exactly quite. Synonymous, but reason plight. To pose, to sit, to model. That is all the same, and yet not quite. We are posing for pictures, but sit to be painted. We model while walking down runways, displaying. We can pose a question, but not sit or model one. We can model an attitude, be a role model too. But posing is faking and sitting's not doing. Or the problem of synonyms gets much worse. For non-native speakers, and even worse, for them what's not properly educated or possessed of the proper social graces. Posing for upworldly mobile employment, administering other people's enjoyments. Worse yet, when elected, the power consuming, our posing politicians raging, posing a question we should all talk about. If honesty can't be counted upon, isn't it time all these posers were gone? Consider term limits, folks. That's all I'm going to say. I live in a state where we are trying to impeach the governor. The only problem with doing that is the lieutenant governor is twice as bad, and the Speaker of the House has just been convicted of 12 charges, 12 different counts. So it's hard to find anybody to replace them now. I changed the title of this poem. It's now just simply called Jasmine. They say it is the most delicate and beautiful flower. It must be so, for almost every fragrance with a delicate and beautiful name contains it. As for myself, I will never know what it is the world smells, and are held in such great awe of, because I am allergic to jasmine. To me it is an overbearing, oppressively sweet stench, and so I read carefully fragrance ingredients, lest the beauty intended become foul in my senses. I know it is not the fragrance, it is me, but I can change neither. And I had given up on ever knowing what I was missing until by chance I smelled this one light and dainty fragrance. The ingredient said slight trace of jasmine petals. Oh, sniff. That's very nice. Maybe it is not the scent of beauty I cannot stand, but its abundance. I seem to be allowed only the hint, the implication, the slight trace of jasmine. I know the time's up, but I just have a couple more, so if y'all will put up with me, I'll read what's left. These are poems that have kind of like two versions. They're really the same poem. They're just worded differently. Ah, thank you. This is called We Float, We Fly. Once upon a starlit dream, floating in an island in the sky, we shared a moment, heart to heart. All differences just dropped away, and we saw each in every face reflections of a common theme. And even on the worst of days, nothing seems to matter here, inside this pure and honest sound. We float, we fly, we turn our backs on fear and just believe. And this is the same poem. It's just different words. Sometimes one hears music, simple, pure, and rare. The earth all but blinks into another time as our hearts are lifted on the air, and we fly free of human bonds, shimmered on the wings of a song. It just helps sometimes when you write a piece to ask yourself, what did I really mean? If I boil this down to its essence, what did I really mean? And you can get sometimes an entirely different piece. This is another example of that. This is a long poem and a haiku. This is the same poem. This one's called Wheel. The wheel of time turns another round, another move away from youth, and wisdom adds another year to the pages of life lived in truth. With time we come to know candles were not meant to burn quickly from both ends at once. It's only with a slower pace we learn why and where and how to be, becoming ever more we see that the path that we have walked equipped us for our destiny. Growing, living, learning, showing, moving through this time and space, ever, only, always bound by trust. Life is more than blood and lust. All those stones we stumbled on, all those detours that we cursed, all those times we felt so lost, and all those times we called the worst, taught our hearts to trust, just trust. The wheel of time keeps turning while we live out life on earth, and every day we live just as we must. The wheel of time turns another round, another move away from youth, and wisdom adds another year to the pages of life lived in truth. Becoming ever more we see why and where and how to be. Life is more than blood and lust when we let go and learn to trust. Or, in as few words as I could possibly manage, the same idea. Wheel of time. Walking hard stone paths teaches empathy and love and enables flight. So there you have it. I have, I think, two more quickies. This is What Water Knows. Just outside the door on the window ledge, miracles occurring just beyond our sight. In our hand, the universe in one drop of water growing. Whirls and whirls colliding just beyond perception. We are shaped and made, bending willows in the wind of sound. And this one should remind Rosedrop Rust of something. This is a poem. There's nothing better. There's nothing better to write a poem and hear later that it inspired somebody else to write a poem. That's as good a compliment as I could possibly receive. If anything I've said tonight has inspired any of you, I thank you for the opportunity to have done so. This is called You Write the First Line. Everything you need to know, except how the end of the story goes, you get in the first line. You feel it in the wind behind, the taste there on the tip of your tongue, and you are lost or bound by the second round. Every heartbeat rhyme spins around another time, but all you really need to know, you get in the first line. Thanks, everybody. It's been up for you.